Had a little listen to his podcast, huh?
Dude, it's educational. And besides, I've been wanting to listen to this one.
Welcome to Idling in the Impala, a podcast by and for lovers of supernatural and the fan fiction it inspires. Before we begin, just want to remind you to like, subscribe, follow wherever you listen to us so you don't miss any episodes or bonus stuff that we do. I'm Sandra.
I'm Karlee, and today we are 5 months down the line, but that's relevant. Shut up. I have finally finished Sandra's latest novel, Cowboy, Canter, and it was amazing, by the way. So everybody should go buy a copy. Go on, we'll wait. Okay, you back? You ready? Good, cool. All right. So I finally finished it, and I had a bunch of questions just in general about the story, and then about Sandra's journey to, because Sandra is self-published and is on Amazon, and she self-narrated this one as well. So I had like a bunch of questions, and then I was like, hi, we're doing an episode. And she was like, what? And I'm like, yeah, we're doing an episode. And then, because she's a cow, I wrote down a page of questions, and I was so proud. I had questions and bullet points and stuff. And at the time of recording, we've just finished recording all of the stuff for Junkies. So I was like, I've written questions down. I'm prepared. And the bitch brought a presentation to Junkies, a whole ass PowerPoint. And I was like, I was so proud of my bullet points.
And to add insult to injury, I have not even looked at your questions.
Oh, no, that was by choice, though. Because I did say, I was like, do you want to look at the questions? And she was like, no, because then I'll start to overthink it.
And I'll have a set of notes, and I was like, no, like, we're just gonna take the Karlee approach.
Wing it. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. So I'm not gonna get too much into the story of Cowboy Cancer, because I think I don't like, there might be spoilers, but if there are, we'll tag them and stuff like that. But I suppose if I were to summarize it, I would be like, if you put Dean in a cowboy hat as boots and threw in some horses and the cutest little girl, you'd probably be, you'd be pretty close. You'd be pretty close. So I suppose now is the time to fess up. I started the story, and I was like, okay, so we have a main character who is Diana.
Uh-huh.
Diana. Yes. Yeah. Look how good I am. No, I will explain why.
I'll probably forget names as well, because it's been so long since I've even looked at the story, because I think your mantra of it's finished when I hate it is really how most writers think about their stories, where when you're finally done with the editing and the revision, and in terms of writing and then self-publishing, it's a whole other step.
I can only imagine.
The narrating was another step. So I was like, when I was done with that puppy, I was done. So
I am never looking at this again.
Yeah, I probably will.
The reason that the main character's name, the female lead character, doesn't stick in my mind is because I started the story, and it's like, okay, we've got Diana, and then we have Jesse, and we'll just call him Jesse for now. That's fine. And by the end of it, these characters had morphed into Sandra and Dean.
Oh no! In your head?
I don't.
Okay.
In my head,
okay.
And I don't mean that to be offensive, because they were characterized brilliantly, and they were, like, I could see the Dean references, but that's because I've spent, so much of the last 3 years immersed in Dean and supernatural, and of course, we talk pretty much every day. We do the podcast. I'm like, Dean is. I'm just immersed in Winchesters all the time, so I could see all of the references. But so I think that's that's not to say that these characters are not fleshed out and wonderful. Just that they just morphed in my head, because I could see a lot of you in the female lead as well. Just morphed over. But I suppose. Well, I'll start with like the first question that came to mind, which was there anything in particular that prompted you to write a cowboy story? Because you've written like, historical romance, with your Romance Reign series, and you've got your DIY series, which is, I'm assuming, I haven't read it, I'm sorry. I'll get to it. I will. It's on the list. It's on the list. Like, one of the reasons that it took me 5 months to read this book, which I could have read in an afternoon, and that's not a humble brag. I read very quickly. Sandra comments on this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It was of a length that I could have read it in an afternoon, but I struggle to read fiction stories anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it takes me a long time.
Yeah.
So I'll get to them. I will. Leave it with me. But I'm assuming that was a bit more sort of like modern, contemporary, and then we've got the historical romance. So what were you like at Cowboys? Was there anything that, where did that come from?
It really was just Dean in a cowboy hat to start.
Okay.
I think that was the initial interest in writing a character. Not necessarily, I wanted a contemporary character that kind of had a little bit of those down home cowboy characteristics feel to him, but still like also displaced a little bit in terms of his storyline and what he'd gone through, as a kid and then moving into another place. And honestly, I think that I was looking at I went back to Google, and this is where I really do appreciate Google Docs, is that I could go back and look at my revisions and figure out, okay, when did I actually start this part of the story? So I had already done like my notes, sort of like my what ifs. And it's like, what if there was a fish out of water tale, but on both ends, from the female perspective, male perspective, but different kind of time periods and different things that they're struggling with, like when they were the fish out of water. So I had started actually like writing the first page of this. It was in November of 2020. But I had already had thoughts and some outlines and things in place before that. So I'm probably thinking, if we're just going to time it, it was probably because of the ending of Supernatural around that time, kind of wanting to give Dean's characterization a bit of like an alternate universe scenario. All of my writing, I think, even going way back, I started writing fan fiction in high school. So I feel like all of my fiction writing is based off of some character that I like, I romanticize about or whatever, and just like putting them in the situations that end up being just love stories in and of themselves. It's kind of like my operating mode is just I like the happily ever after. If it's not a happily ever after, happy for right now. Like happy at this point in time. If there's going to be
happy to threaten the author with violence if they don't make it happy.
So that kind of thing, like knowing that there's eventually going to be a happily ever after for the the main characters in a story. So I think really a lot of it was just Dean. Dean gives you a lot of stuff to work with. And physically, like I just liked Jensen Dean in a cowboy hat. And I liked that idea of a Texas boy, and how that would play with like a city, quote unquote, like city girl, a standard trope, city girl, country boy kind of thing, but just with sort of like the skeleton or framework of Dean as the love interest in there. So I mean, this one took me a long time, and I can't, most of my stories typically, it depends, but stop and start. There were so many things going on too. I mean, this was during COVID, but this took me a long time to finish writing. Like I definitely took like months where I just didn't touch it. And then I went back to it, and then I'd get like a sprint of, okay, this is what I want to do next. And then I finally just like, I think it was like June of 2022, I'd left my job, and, I was kind of like embarking on this like sort of next phase of what the heck am I doing? And I'm like, okay, I've got time now. I have to commit to getting this story done within the next few months, so that then I can edit, get my editor, do all the things that I was hoping to do by the end of the year with this book.
Yeah.
So, and interesting too, is that when I first started writing this book, I looked back, I had started writing it in first person.
Oh, really?
I did about a couple pages of it, and I just wasn't, most romance novels are third person. And I think it just kind of, it's just that genre just kind of like works that way. And as I was starting, and I was like, I really didn't want to get so into like this being that I was the character. And I tried to do some things with the characterization of Diana that was vastly sort of different from me. So I was like, no, I'm like, I gotta go back. So I went back and like, again, those like first couple pages, I just kind of like reworked a little bit. I'm like, okay, I'm good. I think I can do this now. So yeah, that's kind of like, again, it's all just, I'm just an escapist writer. I want to write things that I normally would not necessarily experience or would want to experience. And normally that's romantic stuff. So it's all just kind of Dean in a cowboy hat to start, and I wanted to see him in some cowboy boots, and we only get a couple instances of him in the show, like season 6, Frontierland. And then I think season 13, Tombstone, that episode. So I didn't have a lot to work with. And this was before Big Sky. This was even before that, there was even talk about him being in this show. So probably Jared having, knowing he was going to be on Walker, maybe had a little bit to do with it too, knowing he was going to be playing, basically dude in a cowboy hat, but contemporary. So I think those things kind of work together.
You had plenty of inspiration from Jensen though, because he wears cowboy boots all the time. And I giggle to myself every time I see him in cowboy boots because they always have heels. And I'm not like, this is not a sexist thing. I'm not like, oh, men shouldn't wear heels. It just makes me laugh because I know that he's tall, but I feel like he must, like, I don't want to say he's compensating for something, but I feel like there must be, unless you just cannot buy cowboy boots without heels in Texas. I can't imagine him buying them anywhere else because this is a Texas thing. But I'm just like, oh, baby needs an extra 2 inches to stand next to Jared. Just makes me laugh. And I'm aware that that's very mean. And I mean that. And Jensen, if you're listening, I mean that in the best possible way. You rock the cowboy boots. It's cute as fuck. It just makes me smile.
Yeah. I think
that is all.
I think the first time I saw him wear cowboy boots in person, because I went to
because she's met him
when I went to the Charlotte Con, I don't think he wore cowboy boots. But when I went to New Jersey, I think it was April 2022. I think that's when I got to actually, when I'd done the meet and greet, he was wearing a particular set of cowboy boots, and I got to sit like, kind of
you were close,
7 feet away from him as he was talking for about 30 minutes. And it was glorious. And it was just like taking in all of that.
His boots would have been what I was paying attention to, but you do you, boo. You do
all of it, like the jeans, all of it was just nice.
Amazing.
It was good material to be able to kind of like file away in my brain and be like, okay, this is what the perfect man looks like. This is what you're going
Nobody
to use
Ted.
to go.
Nobody tell Ted.
He's the perfect man for my heart. Ted's the perfect man for my heart. But in terms of like perfect man physicality, we've talked about this. I didn't think this was possible in real life, to be next to somebody that looked that good in person. And he does. So that was also, that maybe helped a little bit more me getting some stuff written. I think was having that material to go fall back on for that. Yeah.
So just starting off with Dean in some cowboy boots and a cowboy hat, which I'm fully on board with that. I'm fully on board with that.
And only one layer could we actually establish that, every once in a while, like just a t-shirt, like just a t-shirt's good. So that kind of thing. Yeah.
I mean, if I liked Walker, if I could stomach up to watch Walker, you better believe I'd be writing fanfic with a Jared in a cowboy hat. But that's another story. So not to get too, I'm not going to ask you to dox yourself or anything, but I know the area that it's set is a familiar area to you. Did you pick that because like what the streets look like there, or were you just like throw a dart at a map and that's just where it landed? Not
necessarily that I knew everything about it, but I visited Round Hill, Virginia quite a few times because my in-laws live there. I just kind of liked the feeling of the town of Round Hill. It's the old town of Round Hill is very like maybe only like 4 or 5, not even sidewalks, streets, and then you move into like everything that's been rebuilt and what they've done to developments and things outside of that. But it's just it's a very nice, like it's got a lot of mountain ranges, it's got a bunch of lovely vineyards, which kind of ties into the story as well. So there's a lot of building up of a very small country town like around it. But yeah, there's mention of like a diner, which is the name of a diner. I've never been in it, but I've driven past it many times, and it's just so cute and little and just like boop right there. And like a little country store. It has a
kind of little town,
but like
kind of thing
nestled in all of this other stuff that's just kind of building up around it, kind of thing, and you can tell what it probably once was, but as everything is in the United States, like we just can't leave, a piece of land without deciding to build something on it. So yeah, that kind of feel, and I knew it enough that I felt like I could bring about some of the descriptions of it. But I definitely did a lot of research about like certain places around Round Hill, and kind of what would make sense, and a little bit of like what the heck do you have to do if you want to start a winery or a vineyard, or like like different little things like that, like tests and stuff that have to happen with the soil and things along that line. And I had to look about stables and different things like that, because my in-laws do have they have horses. So
oh my god, really?
Yeah, they have I couldn't tell you how many they have right now, but they have they have their own little barn stable. They have like miniature horses. They have a couple miniatures, and they have some actual horses. I've never ridden them. But, I've gone to the barn like once or twice, just to kind of like meet them, or my sister-in-law who loves horses as much as her mother does. And they take care of the horses, and, they have people that come out and help. So I kind of, again, I took that part of Diana of not knowing, but just like the sort of the feeling of being around it, and and that kind of thing. So yeah, it was, I guess kind of like a little like nod to, my in-laws too. And my sister-in-laws, she's one of the ones in the family that knows about my romance writing, and she's always been very supportive and stuff like that. So it's kind of like I wanted to kind of like, I don't know, write a little something that if she reads it, she might get that.
She'll get the reference.
Get that feeling and the reference and stuff like that.
Oh,
yeah.
Super cute. I love that.
Yeah.
That's adorable.
Yeah.
I like that. I like horses, but I like horses from over there.
Yeah.
And I'll look at them, but over there.
Yeah.
They bite from one end and kick from the other. And that's not what I want in an animal. I mean, it's fine if they're like cat size. Cats bite from one end and kick from the other, but he's like 8 pounds. I can pick him up. You can't do that with a horse.
And pony rides are a thing that like I did once when I was really little, but the only reason I haven't done it again is because I still don't know what it was. My mom doesn't know, but I'm sure it was just like maybe bug bites or whatever. But after the pony ride, like around my middle, I had like this rash. It was like a belt, and we didn't know what it was, and it went away after a couple of days. But I was just like, well, I don't want to do that again. I don't know what's gonna happen. Weird reasons I've never like attempted. Maybe one day I'll get on a horse again. So
delving a little bit further into the story, there are a few supernatural references, and I have to ask. I know a couple of them were on purpose. But when you said to me that one of them was a complete accident and you didn't clock it, and I'm still dubious about that.
Yeah.
I don't believe you could put that in there and not. So if you were fibbing, now is the time to fess.
No,
I don't think anyone else will believe it.
I'm literally not fibbing. I'm not fibbing. I did not clock doing that and relating it to supernatural. That one thing in particular that you're talking about. Yeah.
So the reference I'm talking to again, I'm going to try my hardest not to spoil. There is a character who has a name that starts with J and a surname that's, I think her name was Roderick. I think.
Yeah.
And the Jessie, our male lead, calls her J-Rod, and I was like, holy shit, a Jared reference. And I went to Sandra after I'd finished it, and I was like, oh my god, you put a Jared reference in. And she went, what? And I was like, fucking what? J-Rod, it's right there. And she's like, no, not on purpose. What? And I was genuinely hyped because I'd been, so Diana, our leading lady, her father's name is Bobby, and I'd been side-eyeing that for the whole book, like, deliberate, not deliberate, because he's not particularly Bobby-esque.
No, but
I don't get Bobby vibes from him.
There's certain parts of Bobby physically that I kind of like leaned on a little bit. But yeah, I was trying to, I was like channeling a little bit of Bobby in this Bobby.
Yeah.
Because I think
I got some of it. I did. I did get some of it, but I was just, I don't know. He was
the cranky, grumpy,
far too reasonable to be. I mean, he had his moments, but like I can't see, for example. So this is it's a modern story. It's set in like the the 2010s, 2020s, and I can't see our Bobby sitting down and doing a Zoom call. I just
he was getting help. He was getting help to do that, and there were reasons behind. There were reasons behind that, of the monetary variety. I think.
Was Charlie lifted from Supernatural as well?
No, I just wanted to use the name. I just wanted to use the name and kind of like a little,
because she did give
Charlie.
Me. I was side-eyeing Bobby, but Charlie gave me big Charlie vibes. I was like, oh my god, that's so fucking cute.
I think I definitely got a little bit of inspiration from her. Yeah, but not trying to full on, Charlie. But she definitely spoke to me as, and I mean, so did the main character actually, with like, like the dyed hair and the kind of like, obviously we've got Diana being, a punk, not a goth. Very fucking clear about this. Not a goth, punky. And then Charlie, like with her short dyed hair, and I could just, I've been on the receiving end of going to more conservative places with that kind of image and the side eyes that you get, and people are like, what the fuck? Yeah, I think that's getting better. I think it's becoming more accepted. But again, like you'll get like older, older generations are just like kind of and then they typically kind of get it. But yeah, it's.
But I was a fan of Charlie. I liked her.
Good.
And then of course the biggest Supernatural reference, which you cannot even front, is not. I said our main character, our male lead, is called Jesse, and he is Jesse Dean Campbell.
Yeah,
you have to front that one up. You have to be like, yes.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely
Dean in a cowboy hat, and I will call him Dean.
Yeah, and I mean, I used Campbell, as Mary Campbell, and I was just like, so I mean, if you know of Supernatural and you follow Supernatural and you read that story, you're going to, I think, you're going to pick it up right away. What I kind of hope too is that, outside of somebody not knowing about Dean as the character, I think it's just, you want to still be able to flesh out. Yeah, it's a nice name, and you want to flesh out the character and make the character, his own with inspiration from. But yeah, it's Dean. I mean, how could I? It was funny too, because my editor, kind of side note tangent, but the editor I've worked with for probably about, I'd say at least maybe like 6 or 7 of my books. I'd asked her during COVID. It was when I finished A View to a Winchester, and because I'd finished that so quickly, and it was just like, I've never written a book that quickly. Like 3 months, I wrote a novel. I've never done that. When I had this, I was like, well, I'd really like to have this kind of like just cleaned up or polished a little bit. So I went to her, I said, look, I said, I said, this is fan fiction. I'm not going to publish this in any way, shape or form. I said, but I want to get this edited, proofread, at least like for grammar, like that kind of stuff. Or if something seems like really off to you, let me know and I can clean it up. So she kind of did like a first pass, like not like an in-depth, like copy or line like edit kind of thing, like none of that like developmental stuff. And she'd only like watched, because I asked her, I said, do you know about Supernatural? She's like, oh, she's like, I think I watched like the first season like years ago. And you would be happy to know that she liked Sam, in the season. So I said, well, I said, I'm more of the Dean girl. I said, so anyway, she helped me do that. But she literally picked up on like when I mentioned Dean, she's like, of course. She wrote in the notes, like, of course, I get it now. And so it was like, it was nice to have that sort of, connection with the story that, she even caught it, even though she's not a Supernatural fan. She's like, oh, there you go, adding Dean in there. There it is. So yeah, it's awesome, it's pretty blatant.
It is. But I fell in love with the name Jesse from Breaking Bad because I have the biggest fucking crush on Aaron Paul. Like, oh my God. Like it's not right is the only way I could describe it to you. Because it's not like, I'm gonna be honest, it's not so much Aaron Paul, but I think he's a great person. It is 100% Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad. And I don't know if you've watched Breaking Bad, but he's not. He's not like Sam and Dean, where you're like bad deeds for good reasons. He's, I mean, obviously he's not Walter White levels of bad, but I'm just like, oh no, he's like the stereotypical bad boy, and I'm just there like, fucking Jesus Christ. So I love the name Jesse, and I do think it's one of those names where I'm like, I could see it being an actual name of Jensen's, like Soldier Boy and Ben, and I'm like, yeah, you could be a Ben, you could be a Dean, and you could be a Jesse, and you could be a Ben, and I'm just, I don't know, I really like it.
I thought it was a nice
cowboy hat. And,
that was a nice country. And plus, I think Jesse James and stuff like that. So it's kind of like Jesse kind of gave me that. You immediately get like a country vibe, I feel like, from that name. Yeah.
And our hero was he was a Texas boy, wasn't he? But he was moved up to Virginia quite young. So again, I don't want to sort of delve into the plot because I want people to go away from this and read it, because it really is like, and I'll be completely honest. Romance is not, if I read romance, it tends to be like paranormal romance and things like that, and certainly much more explicit. This puts me in mind of, I would call it like a holiday book, like middle-aged moms, and they've got their little naughty book on the beach,
like a beach read. Yeah.
This is like, and I don't mean that derogatory in any sense, but this is, it's quite far away from what I would normally read, and I've really enjoyed it. So I want everybody to listen to this and then go, oh, I'm gonna go buy a copy of Cowboy Canter. There will be links in the description. And Sandra narrated it as well, and you can go get the narration, which I haven't listened to. I asked if I needed to and was told no, it's probably fine.
Yeah, so because
I fill you in on that.
I feel like some people tend to gravitate towards narration, but I think for you reading it, I wanted you to read it without hearing the way I was going to present the characters, if that makes sense. Like I knew you'd get it, but I didn't want to, like, I guess, color. It's kind of like when you watch a movie based off of a book and then like maybe go back and read the book. Like you kind of can't get away from what you were initially given as an interpretation and then go back and read. So there's like that ends up being, now some people love audiobooks, and that's great. And if that's the way they choose to take in their literature, then that's fine. I think it's nice to give people the option, but I knew how you were with reading too. So I was like, they'll be fine. They'll get through it, and they don't need me to give them a version of it. Cause honestly, I think at this point, this was like maybe the second book that I had narrated that was strictly fiction. The first one I had done, again, not my book, but as I've started into narration, I was offered to do like a horror thriller, like just out of the blue. I had this author approach me and like, I'd like you to do my book. I'm like, have you listened to what I narrate? I'm like, I've never narrated fiction before. And I was just like, I really want to make sure that I can do your story justice. So I said, you please send me a chapter that you'd like me to read, like, to audition. I want you to hear me bring your characters out. If that's what you still want, then fine. I said, but I was pretty, blatant about, I don't know if I can do this. And then, I got the book and I'm like, oh my God, this book is so long and there's so many characters and, what am I going to do? And then I was like, holy shit, why did I write a book that has so many characters and now I had to narrate all this? So I think I've gained a lot of appreciation for narrators in general and how they have to bring someone else's story to life. And I'm still learning. I'm in no way feel like I'm a voice actor. I feel like I'm a narrator first. And I feel like I can convey what needs to be conveyed, but not act it, if that makes sense. So I can't do all the voices. I can't do all the things I do. I can reading a lot of fan fiction has definitely helped with my ability to feel a little bit more confident about that. But yeah, it's definitely, and you're never going to satisfy anybody when you narrate. You're going to have some people that love it, some people that hate it. And because, they've got an idea of what it's supposed to sound like. And you either mesh with that or you don't. Everybody's listening style is different too. So that, plays a factor in it. So yeah, sorry, tangent. But yeah, that was kind of why I was like, no, I don't want you to listen to me like, first, or even like you don't have to after.
Characterization. So. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I get that. As I've got older and my ability to sit down and consume media like that has certainly diminished, but also it's kind of hard if you're like right in the middle of a book and then it just throws you right out of it. So I audiobooks are my preferred method now. But you said to me, you were like, I would really rather you just read this because I don't want to color my interpretation of the characters with your characterization of them as you read them.
Because if you already saw Diana as part of me, hearing me speak Diana was not gonna
I don't know. It was just, I think it was the further I got into the book and the way Diana is thinking about Jesse and I was just like, oh man, it sounds just like you. This is how you wax lyrical about Dean.
Yeah.
Like I get it.
Yeah.
But she was very characterized and she was very fleshed out and it's not like a self-insert story in any capacity. You wouldn't, if you listened to a year of this podcast, you wouldn't go, oh my God, that's Sandra. No, it's just I was close to the source material, as it were. So I suppose since we're on the subject of characters, this was not my next question, but it is going to be now. When you sit down to write, I know you said that the whole idea for this story came from the idea of just Dean in a cowboy hat, but I'm always, whenever I think about characterization, although she can fuck off and die in a pool of Republican tears, get fucked, wizard Karen. Whenever I think about characterization, I always remember the quote from She Who Shall Not Be Named, which was that she's on a train in King's Cross, whatever, and in her words, Harry Potter walked into her head fully formed. She didn't have to think about him or who he was. He presented himself to her, the character. And I know for me personally, one of the reasons that I vastly prefer fanfic and that I've never tried to do anything with my own original characters is because I don't have to characterize them. I can go, it's Sam Winchester, and you know who I mean. I don't have to give you anything about him. You know who I mean. So that's kind of where I'm at. But like, do you have to like sit down and think, and this is, do they come to you like Harry Potter with a like almost ready, or do you really have to sit down and be like, and this and this and this? And this is a completely rhetorical question because I have characterized shit with you and I know, but our readers don't. Our listeners even don't tell them.
I think it's a process. I think you come up with you come up with a thought or a basic idea. Like I said, I think just thinking about Dean in a cowboy hat is great. And you could, write a million one shots about that. But if you're going to talk about the character, then you talk about, well, where is he at? What is he doing? What does he do for a living? What could be the connection with this other character? How do they, quote unquote, if in romance, it's how do they meet cute? What's their meet cute? And then, so it kind of like, it goes into little puzzle pieces. So you and I have done like character sheets, right? Like we've done those together too. And a lot of those kind of help with what's the motivation before you even get into plot, like what's the backstory. And I think what's nice about character development that way is you don't have canon that you have to follow, and again, most people don't anyway, but no matter what you put Dean Winchester in any alternative universe, in any scenario, you've got an idea of Dean Winchester that you really can't break out of if you're reading fan fiction. Same thing with Sam Winchester and all that. So I like characters because then, just fully fleshed out in my own mind, because I can kind of play with this. I can pull this thread and like, well, does that make sense to do? Where do I put them? What does Diana do for a living? And I, again, you get to do a little bit of escapism and what ifs, and then not have to go back to, but this is how this character would automatically react to any situation. It helps when you have a character that you really enjoy and you want to see how they would work in another situation. So Dean was kind of like that, like Jesse and Dean. Like I knew what I was working with in personality, maybe a little bit of sassy, charming, but kind of like what are they not willing to let people see kind of situation. Yeah. Where Diana was very, I wanted to make Diana very kind of like gung-ho, career driven, messy, which is not what I am, but it's like I wanted her to be like so like all over the place and kind of like maybe a little like so focused, like it kind of like you could say maybe a little ADD in there, like kind of thrown in where like, go, 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 kind of like, hyper focused, but then sees the big picture and kind of like take charge in a way that, I maybe necessarily wouldn't in a lot of situations, but still the person that people go to for answers, solutions, that kind of a situation. And then how does that work? Again, like how do the characters know each other or don't know each other? And having a little bit of perception. And the very first line I think is in the book is kind of what started my like, thought of city girl, country boy, which is like stereotypes. Why are they stereotypically so right sometimes? Like, you can see something surface level and, again, like you don't want to stereotype everybody, but, she's the stereotypical like city girl, and, he's the country boy, but then what's underneath that when they get to know each other. And, I think they already were very biased towards each other based off of, past experience, which was very limited. But then when they come back together later, it's a completely different thing now. It's just all other things kind of going. So yeah, I kind of start with an idea, but then I want to focus on family. I think family is important. And I always tend to go back to parents, a relationship, because I think that's the crux of everybody's existence. And if you want to really kind of get to the heart of the matter, sometimes it's just how does somebody relate to their parent? So that sort of Diana Bobby relationship was something I kind of wanted to look at and work with, and how you see your parents when you're younger, and then as you get older, you realize more of the humanity, I think, of your parents and that kind of aspect of it. And I think Jesse, was kind of, unfortunately, didn't have as much of that, but was still struggling to kind of deal with that, figure that stuff out for him too. So yeah, lots of character. Why, how, what, like, I think when you can build like what they do for a living too, like that can kind of go off of it. I think the location, the setting that you put them in has a lot to do with that too. But I just like romantic heroes that you feel like at the end of the day are going to want to save the person that they care about in one way or another. And they can do that lots of different ways.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like that dynamic. I don't know if you'd say they were like enemies to lovers in this, but just kind of like not really knowing each other. Enemies to lovers can be really harsh. And I didn't want to do that in this story.
I didn't get that vibe.
Yeah.
I've got to say I didn't get that vibe. I particularly when they sort of first meet and you sort of it's alternating POVs for the first like when they're together and things like that. And I had this sense of when they knew each other as children, spoiler, I suppose, that they had both been hurting children for different reasons. And then to see them come together as adults and they were still kind of playing those not childish games, but that calculated maneuvering of not showing a weakness and keeping that front up, which I feel like usually you grow out of as an adult, and you sort of learn what you're willing to present to the world and what you're not, and it's not calculated anymore. You're more at peace with yourself, you know who you are. But that was the vibe I got from these two, that they were still sort of dancing because they hadn't really worked out the issues when they were kids. And then obviously she'd left and he'd gone and had his life, and then you come back and you're like, oh, it's awkward, it's weird, in a way that I didn't feel like she was playing the same game with the not rival love interest, but the other interested party. Yeah, I felt like she was much more confident. She was like, I know where I'm at, and yeah, maybe. And then, oh, fucking hell, absolutely not. You know, it didn't feel like they were playing the same game.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with when as an adult you put yourself back into a situation could be triggering for a bunch of different reasons. So I think going back, dealing with her father and dealing with the relationship that, she realized that Jessie had with her father, that maybe she didn't. So I think it's always interesting when you see, like, especially siblings, like when siblings come back together at a holiday, like how everybody kind of reverts back, whether they consciously realize it or not, they're going back into those dynamics of children a lot of times when you see that. So they can be fully grown adults, and they can still have that.
They're still arguing about who's got the bigger portion.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that. So I kind of feel like that was what was probably happening, I think, with them. I think in particular, again, a lot of like just not knowing and being like, well, I don't want to, like you said, I don't want you to see that I can't hold my own kind of situation, and not still not really knowing each other, like really, like whatever they experienced with each other was very surface way back. So, and
they were kids, and they were kids. And I have to say I was a big fan of, because she'd left and she didn't come back and see her dad, and he was kind of like, well, if you've been around, you'd know this and you'd know that. And I don't know, because I could see Jessie fighting not to be swept up in that small town mentality that, his aunt and everybody else was in, but also couldn't resist being like, well, if you showed your face,
just poking
these
a little
things
bit.
wouldn't, this wouldn't be such a surprise to you, and you wouldn't be, scrambling to try and find these answers because, well, if you cared, you'd be here. It was, I said earlier on that this, I view this as a beach book, and that's not really true, because it doesn't hit a lot of those tropes that I consider, I think that's just my unconscious bias towards contemporary romance, because no part of it felt cliched to me. And that, of course, there were romance tropes, because otherwise it wouldn't be a romance. They're tropes for a reason, guys. But no, it felt very, very original in terms of storytelling, and I wasn't looking at any of the characters going, ugh, So you did, for someone who doesn't particularly read romance unless there is buttloads of explicit sex and, you know, preferably some vampires or something. If you haven't read the Black Dagger Brotherhood books by J.R. Ward, you're missing something in your life. Go amend that immediately. You know, they are like my peak romance novels. So, you know, to come into this unknown sphere and not feel like I was being hammered over the head by all those, you know, stereotypical romance tropes speaks to you as an author, and you did fabulous.
Thank you.
So
thank you.
On the back of, you know, not being tropey and not being cliche, similar question to the characters, because this was supposed to come before the character question, but it didn't. The plot. So I have said this to Sandra. This is the first original piece of fiction I've ever read by Sandra, but I've read every fanfic she's ever posted. And I've said this to her numerous times. If you give her enough space, she will lay a trail of breadcrumbs that you won't even fucking see. And then y'all ever seen those, like, they're usually like 5-minute craft videos, and it's somebody sewing something and you're like, what the fuck are they doing? And they pull one thread and it all just smooshes together perfectly. She lays these breadcrumbs that you don't even fucking realize. And then she gets to the end and she just, one thread and just goes, shroot, and it all smooshes together perfectly. And I'm like, you're a master. What the fuck? Because it's never, I'm thinking particularly of Past Due, because that one fucking floored me. But you've done this in so many different things, like View to Winchester, you know, Some Sunny Day series, all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, how do you do this? And she did it again with this one. Obviously, she's a master, mistress, whichever you prefer. We're not gendering royalty of being a fucking plot twist. Words. Okay. So the plot of this, obviously we start out with, what happens if you put Dean in a cowboy hat? And that's great for a couple of scenes, but you need more than that.
Well, yeah.
So do you like, particularly with these really incredible like twist endings that you're able to pull off, I'm insanely jealous. So jealous, because I just can't. It doesn't work like that. I have to put everything on the page. So do you have the ending and work backwards, or do you start out with like one particular scene anywhere in the plot and work around from that? Like, how does your process work? Because it's longer than mine.
I wish I could say my process, you know, really, I could just like give you a step-by-step, this is how I do it. So the one good thing about, or the one thing I've learned about romance over the years is like, you know, you can do a romance, but if there isn't another conflict or sort of like another plot that's kind of like running parallel to it, and they intersect and weave, you know, in at some point, it's not going to be an interesting story. So and that's when I think it becomes more like, say, you could do fan fiction where you're just talking about, you know, two characters getting together, but you've got to have a layer of what's going on behind the scenes. Why is this person here? And I think what initially gave me that, this is the conflict, is whatever was happening with Diana's father and his sort of like financial issues. And I was like, well, that's the part that I've got to build off of and find another plot, and sort of like a little bit of like a small town, not mystery, but like gossip, and how you kind of hear something from somebody else, what's real, what isn't. And then I will say, since you've read the story, there's a character that's pretty important towards the end of the story that I did not put in until 2/3 of the way through, because I realized I needed that character to accomplish the twist at the end, because the other characters were too close to it, and I needed sort of like that other person. And we could talk after if you don't know who that is.
I think I know. Yeah.
So that was kind of, that was my aha moment. I'm like, oh, okay, if I do this, if I get this person in here. So that then had me go back and look at what I was going to rely on for more of, say, the other characters. I needed to fit this person into certain points in the story, have them come up again and again and again, because you can have romance, you can have like love triangles or whatever. This wasn't really a love triangle in here, but there was a rivalry sort of thing. But then I needed something else to have that other plot that was going on make sense. Because then how would I get Jesse involved? You know, like, why would Jesse be a part of all of whatever was going on? Like, because I needed to have them meet again. I needed to have them work together. So it's like, how do you get them to come back again and maybe hit all of those fun scenes you want to write? Like Jesse riding a mechanical bull. Like, I knew I wanted that in the story. How was I going to get that in there? So it's like, you know, when you know there's certain things you want to see, how do you make that work within the different plots? So it's managing a couple of like main plot, secondary plot, and how does that plot help bring about conflict between the characters and just within the story itself. And Bobby, I think, was Bobby was the main reason everything started happening and got them together, you know, like to work together for whatever reason they needed to work together. And then from there, it's like, well, okay. So again, it kind of works in pieces. Like you know where you want to get to, but how do you get there? So it's like, I might know what the ending is like, or that there's this mystery, but sometimes I don't even know how I'm going to get there right away. But then I sort of like you work in different characters, right? Different characters that are going to give you the opportunity to kind of.
Oh shit! Is that what you meant to do? Oh. I thought you just kept hammering the same two characters over and over until they did as they were told. Different genres.
Again, that's the fun part, I think, too, about writing original fiction is you have a little bit more play, you know, and you can go back and like, you know, I need another character, or there's too many characters. I can put all of this into one character. You know what I mean? So it's like, how much do you really need? And it depends on how big of a story you want to tell. Like, I feel like there are a lot of secondary characters in this, but not a ton, like just kind of like just enough to give you sort of like a taste of what it's like in the town and that. And even in Diana's in Baltimore. You know, there weren't really a ton, but just enough here and there. And I think it helped with Diana's profession, you know, in literature, in like a publishing company. I loved that I came up with like, children's books, like, because then that opened it up.
That was fucking cute.
That was how I came up with, well, of course it's got to be a pony, you know, it's got to be a pony, you know, and that kind of stuff. So those kinds of aha moments are fun. And then they give you, I need an author for these books. And then, you know, that's how that comes up and those kinds of things. So yeah, plot can be, I don't like plot to be smack dab in your face. Like, I know how this is going to play out. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's fine if you immediately pick out, this is going to be the person that's up to no good. Like, that's fine. But as long as there's still a twist as to how it happens or how it plays out at the end, I think is good. Because most people who've read a lot of these types of books, you know, a third of the way in, they know how it's going to end. And you know a romance is going to have a happily ever after, but what happens around that happily ever after is what can be more challenging. I say that, but then, you know, everything about writing ends up being a challenge at one point or another. It just depends on what you're working on difficult. At the time. Yeah,
it's all difficult. But no, there wasn't anything like I've seen this sort of floating around the internet. Something about the internet at large and the ability for anybody to be a critic has taken away from how we consume fiction. So an author that leaves a good trail of what's going to happen and leaves you going, I bet it's this or I bet it's that. That's not bad writing. If you see the twist at the end, that's not bad writing. That's an author that's done their job. And they've left you all the clues. And then you get to the end of the book and go, I was right. Smug goat me. Yeah. That's not bad, you know?
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, that's seen as poor writing. So while there was nothing in the book that surprised me, none of it felt cliched. You know, it hit all the notes I would expect a romance novel to hit,
Right.
But I at no point was I like, oh God, this really?
Mhm.
I wasn't bored or anything like that. And still, I knew vaguely what was going to happen at the end. Like I picked up some of the breadcrumbs. I was like, yes, this is going to be this because this and this and this. But then the way that shakes out with that final confrontation was not expecting that to go down that way. Spoilers, we've got loaded sentences here. I picked up the breadcrumbs towards the overarching plot and that it was, all right, spoiler. I knew that the family was going to be, they had that kind of like small town royalty.
Yeah.
I knew that was going to be what was behind it. But the showdown with Billy was not what I was expecting. I was like, oh, fuck it. Oh, shit.
Good.
All right, then.
Good.
Oh.
Good. Little instability always helps.
Yeah. And the whole, I'll tag this section for spoilers, but the whole like the arson thing and it was, and that he was giving it to the matriarch person. And I'm like, really? And I don't know. There's just something. It is really stereotypical, but it's really fun. Like those like old ladies that get together and do like bake sales.
Yeah,
and they all hate each other.
Yeah,
they're like, oh, it's so nice. I love that. I love that. Can you like Golden Girls vibes? I love it.
Yeah. Jesse's aunt T. Yeah, yes. she was a lot of fun to write because I felt like there was a lot of that feeling there too of like knowing everybody's business, but then like getting together and chit-chatting away, but then this rivalry, the rivalries that just keep like occurring again and again. Yeah.
And the whole the hypocrisy, the blindness of his aunt to be like, can you believe she needs to keep her mouth shut while telling fucking everybody? I love that. I love that so much because it's not always harmless, but when it's not happening to me, it's cute.
Yeah,
I like it. So
yeah.
Okay. End of book spoilers. So I'll put some timestamps on the screen for that to say, skip to blah blah blah. But I suppose before I lead you off into, so tell us about self-publishing and self-narrating, Sandra. One of the things I wanted to pick up on was like I said, I don't read that many romance novels, so I don't know if this is particularly common. Is it common for your leading man to be divorced? Yes, but child, maybe.
There's a lot of, there's not, there's so many like tropes. There's a lot of, I've seen a lot of like cowboy romances where it's like cowboys with, little kids and like that kind of situation. So there's like a daddy kind of like, that's kind of can be a thing. I haven't written a lot of that. I've written like one book, but that's not even it's both characters and they're middle-aged. So they both have kids kind of situation, and they're single for different reasons at the time. But yeah, that tends to be a thing that I don't particularly like read. I read romance, but I kind of read romance occasionally just to like get an idea of what people are writing. Not necessarily that I
research romance.
Yeah, I really like reading my romance and fan fiction. I just know that's my go-to thing. So yeah, I've seen that lots of dads with kids, but there's so many different. There's something for whatever anybody wants out there in terms of romance tropes and ships.
I tend to go. I think because I have children, and I love my children. Nobody call anybody. I love them endlessly. I would die for them. I would kill for them. I love them, but I don't want kids in my fiction. I live that shit.
Yeah.
So I don't. So like when I was really in my English cottage verse, I was like, oh, where am I going to take this? Are they going to have kids? And my brain just went, no, they're not. Nope. No. These are going to be two double income, no kids people. Absolutely fucking not. But I just, like I said, I don't read enough, standard contemporary romance. If you're looking for romance, can I recommend Black Dagger Brotherhood books by J.R. Ward? It'll change your life. I'm not fucking kidding. Go read one of them. Where did Belinda's name come from? I have to ask because it's not a particularly common name over here.
I just liked Belle. For some reason, Belle kept like, like ringing a bell. That name came. So I was thinking, well, do I call her Isabella? But I'm like, no, let me try
that's
something.
Twilight.
I'm like,
Twilight.
let me try something different. And I think Belinda again sounds a little bit more country to me. It sounds a little bit more like a Southern name. So I think that's why I gravitated towards that. But when you talked about kids, I mean, in romance and stuff, I have talked about this before too. Being child free by choice myself, I don't necessarily like feel like I explore that in my writing. I kind of feel like I battle with going the other way. I like showing couples together that, maybe by choice or for whatever, like if a situation in and of itself just lends to the fact that they don't have kids, that they are still a family unit. And I did that. I kind of
in Some Sunny Day. Yeah.
Yeah. And I even like in the DIY series, I mean, there's the characters kind of are just getting to know each other and, maybe thinking about that, but it's never like you never get to that point where they've got kids, but I think that's like a discussion. So I'm always kind of hesitant, but I mean, some stories are great that do this, but like the automatic assumption that when two characters get together, that the family unit's going to mean, well, then they have kids, So I kind of think that those are always like epilogues sometimes that people put in. And again, a lot of romance readers want that, or they're expecting that in certain genres. And, you deliver that if that's, what you want to write. I may be a little, maybe not fully on board with all of that. Cause there's like, unplanned pregnancy or secret pregnancy, like that's a thing. And you were saying paranormal romance. And I thought that was very interesting because like I've read, like when I first started getting into figuring out like, this is something I want to do, like writing romance. I read like some shifter stuff and I was just like, like wolf shifters. And swear to God, I read a book years ago. I guarantee the two leads in that were based off of Sam and Dean, looking back at it now, because it's like you feel like they got that kernel of, friends, brothers, however situation you want to look at it, and inserting another female, you get the male, female, menage a trois thing going on. And it was just like sex. And they were describing, a couple of the characters, not the best characterization, but still like I could see, this is probably, looking back at it now, I'm like, I bet you that was supernatural related. Especially now that I started learning about ABO, and how that kind of came about too. It's like, I feel like maybe supernatural in a way really like led the charge in other types of
open some doors,
paranormal romance besides just like vampire stuff. Like I feel like that might have been a thing too. But yeah.
I will say the Black Dagger Brotherhood. You should read them. I expect a contract, J.R. Ward. I will promote your books. No, they are vampire. Vampire based. And I'm trying to think. There's at least 10 books before anybody mentions kids.
Okay.
They're all happy being in love. It's nice.
Yeah.
You should read. Yeah. You have a Kindle. I have all of the files. I will send you them. Read them. Okay. So, yeah. So, like I said, before I hand off and be like, Sandra, tell us what it's like to self-publish. Any particular sort of final thoughts, closing thoughts, about the book? Any one particular scene that you're like, I'm so proud of this and I want everybody to know about it? No, because my favorite is the mechanical bull scene. And I sold our friend Dreamer on it, but I was like, it's fucking awesome. Like, it's so good. And she was like, she's like me. She's like, I don't really read fiction. Like, I don't have time.
Yeah.
I have there are so many fanfics out there. And I'm like, can I tempt you by telling you there's a scene where the character that is based on Dean rides a mechanical bull wearing a cowboy hat? And she was like, I could be persuaded. So that was hands down. Was that one of those scenes that you always knew?
I wanted to write that.
Wanted to have
from regarding Dean, the the scene at the end where they show him in slow motion riding, I was like, I need that for
Oh, I
this
need that.
character.
Yeah.
And just I mean, I don't know if there's one scene I'm particularly proud of in that. I do kind of like, which actually ended up getting rewritten based off of editing with my editor, but I think when she goes back to the barn at night, and she kind of has like that first sort of like intimate discussion with Jesse, where I think they kind of really start to talk a little bit more, about themselves and their lives. I kind of like that. I like dialogue, I know, but I kind of feel like I I like when I can write, and it doesn't happen all the time, but when I can, like you've talked about it, let the characters just talk to each other. I
Yeah.
like it when I can be the scribe in that situation or be surprised at stuff that they do. So I feel like the intimate moments, I really like the dancing, at the
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean those kinds of things, and like, the first kiss is always nice, and like I said, it's not super explicit, but those the sex scenes are always kind of, you were like, oh, I can't wait, and then you're like, ah, shit, here I am. Now I got to do something here, and
I write like that in fic. I'm like, oh no, I have this really great idea for a sex scene, and then I have to write the sex scene, and I'm like, I don't want to.
Yeah,
Why have I done this? I've hyped it up too much. I can't do it. Yeah,
and I think that's I really like those intimate moments. When you can kind of like, you feel like you're there with the characters and you feel what they're feeling. It doesn't have to be really, it doesn't have to be a lot, but just has to be like, you get that point with them. So yeah, I mean, I really like that sort of like their official first, date. I thought I thought it wasn't official, but the bull riding and the dancing, and then I think them kind of just being like, okay, this is I want this to, I want to see what happens here kind of situation.
Yeah.
So I liked that. That was fun to write.
They get on the same page where they're like, yeah, no, this is we're gonna do this.
Yeah.
I suppose my not so much my final thoughts, because I'll think of something to summarize that later on. But one of my favorite things about it is you made a point of making it untraditional families, which I really appreciated. So we have our leading lady Diana. Her parents are separated. She's got like a stepdad and a stepsister and but it's never, like her niece is her niece. It's never defined that way. And I like that. And then Jesse, through no fault of his own, comes. Is it a broken home if somebody, spoiler, dies? I don't think so. Maybe. But he also has his own family issues, and then of course him and his ex, and she's fucking cute, by the way. I don't know. Did you base her off any of the? Were you pulling from the Ackles or the Pads kids? Because I was like, she's fucking cute. I love it.
I mean, I
not
guess
that you can't create an organic cute child, but
I think so. I mean, I just kind of wanted a little mini version of, Dean, like and part of that, so I'm sure it was like a little bit of probably like JJ and maybe Arrow, probably a mix of that. Probably. Yeah.
Odette as well. We stand little girls who, when we were young, would have been called bossy and difficult, and now it's 2023 and we're like future leaders, assertive. The kids haven't changed, we've just moved on. But I'm fully on board for little girls who know what they want, and they're gonna
well, what I think is really great too is that like there's a point in time, I think, for little girls where they feel like that, and then I think based off of either family or society, for many girls, I think they're, at least I think like when I was little, and again, I hope it's not this way, but it could still be where you just kind of feel like you have to be quiet. have to be quieter. You can't stand out. And I feel like the age that Belle is, she doesn't have that tossed at her yet. You know what I mean? So it's like she's just her own little person, and she's got her own little fits, and knows what she wants, but she still listens to daddy when she has to, and she, I think her mom is the one that probably, gives her more of the rules that she has to follow. But then, when Jesse still gets, let's not, sugarcoat it. Like, he'll still do what Belle wants, but if he's got to tell her to do something, then she listens. She gets it. She gets it, I think, but he doesn't want to be that way. I think he doesn't
want to be mean, Dad.
Yeah, because
every story every story Jensen's ever told about JJ is encapsulated, where he's like, I would literally pull the moon out of the sky for this little girl. But sometimes, sometimes I have to lay the law down, but I hate it.
Yeah, because
she's my buddy.
Yeah, and that's most dads, I think, in certain situations, especially when you're dealing with separated. Whichever parent isn't with the child primarily, I feel like they really kind of want to be the one that doesn't have to be the bad guy, for whatever reason. So
speaking as the custodial parent, that's really fucking irritating.
yeah
it's cute in fiction, but I didn't really get the vibe that Jesse was like the pushover, yes, of course you can eat 17 Oreos and 18 pounds of candy floss, but as the custodial parent, I can get quite trying. But
plus I think he was respectful of his co-parent too, to a certain extent, where sometimes that doesn't happen, but I think he knew whatever was going to happen with Belle was going to have a consequence, with his ex, Allison's, again, like, I've got so many names.
You're like, I don't remember.
That it was going to be something that she was going to have to deal with, when Belle went back with her. So I wanted him to be be respectful of that. And I feel like as a character, I feel like he's respectful of the women in his life and the roles that they have to play for a lot of people, and how much that they're dependent on. So, and again, like there's other backstory with him that, I thought, well, maybe if I ever come back to these characters, I'd want to explore a little bit more, but I didn't want to like inundate this book with all of that. But so that was my thought, I think, with all of that, with the little girls too. Yeah.
Super, super cute. So I will have closing thoughts, but I'm gonna think about them. So tell us about self-publishing, self-narrating. I am a total noob about this. I know nothing about I know how to post it on AO3. So talk to us about that process and how one goes about doing that.
So just kind of like backtracking, like all of my writing, I think I've said, it's kind of like it originated in fan fiction way, way, way back. Like I was in maybe like high school and stuff. And that's how I got into writing a lot, was like, putting a character into a situation, passing along a notebook to classmates and being like, oh, do you want to be in this? Who do you want to be with? And then like figuring that stuff out. So my writing kind of like stopped and started. I would, and I'll never like give any information as to what it was, but I did publish a book through, this was way back when like ebooks were still a new thing, back in like, I'm going to say 2001 or 2002, on a platform. It was an awful book. Even though it had been edited, it hadn't been edited correctly. It was just a spewing, and it was like a fanfic idea that I put into a plot. It's horrible. Looking back at it now, I'm like, oh my God. I literally had it, I had it pulled. I had to track it down and like have this publisher, like I said, you need to pull this. I want this back. So you could probably still find it somewhere if you knew what to look for. But so anyway,
no, we will respect your process there, and
that was like my
Ask.
first foray into it. And this was back in the day when like I had an editor, but I had to type out my entire manuscript, mail it to someone. They would make
Lord.
notes. It would get mailed back. I would make the changes. Then I would submit to the publisher. Thank God it's not like that anymore. So
Wow.
it didn't go anywhere. It didn't do anything. And again, like I am not by any way, shape, or form. I don't make a lot of money with my writing. It's really more of like tortoise versus the hare kind of scenario in my brain. Like if I do it long enough, if I enjoy what I'm doing, someone will read it, enjoy it, and that's kind of like where I'm at with the writing. So back in, I'm going to say maybe I'll try to make this short. Back in like 2014, 2015, I got back into writing fan fiction, and there was a lot of stuff going on, with my husband, MS and stuff like that. And I was just like, I found a story that I had written that was also fan fiction, but it was novel length. And I was like, well, what if there were things at the time that were popular, and it was a historical romance. It was, spoiler alert, it was based off of Leonardo DiCaprio's The Man in the Iron Mask, which in and of itself, that material, Alexander Dumas' stuff, I argue, could be considered fan fiction because it's taking King Louis XIV and, building this whole other, like the Count of Monte Cristo, like that tale is like fictional, like The Man in the Iron Mask is fictional. So I'd taken a character, put them into that world and, wrote this really long story. So like, well, why don't I think Versailles was like starting to be popular around that time or something like that. I'm like, why don't I just shop this around to some small press publisher? So I started looking into that and how you go about doing that, how you write a synopsis and then you write a letter, a submission letter, different things like that. And I'd submitted it to maybe like 15 or 20 different small press publishers, nothing big, getting rejections, but getting some people saying they really liked the story, but they thought this could be changed or whatever, focus on this. And then I got one publisher that was like, yep, we want to publish this. We'll get an editor, so I worked with a small press publisher on that book. And then I started writing another contemporary romance, and that was the start of the DIY stuff. And I shopped that around and I got another small press publisher that was interested in that. My work with small press publishers, you might as well self-publish, is where I kind of came to the conclusion, because they will help you get your book ready, but then they won't do any marketing. I'm awful with marketing. Karlee will attest to this. So even if I've got a good story, a lot of people just aren't going to find it. So I was like, well, why don't I just freaking write, these stories and just learn how to self-publish it myself. So that's how kind of like a lot of research, learning about Amazon and KDP. And then from there, kind of learning how to find other marketplaces like Drafted Digital, and not just keeping my eggs all in one basket in Amazon. Because honestly, from my experience, even though I don't make a lot of money, I make more money using other services outside of Amazon and Kindle than I do from, I just do. Like I've actually got, my books are in libraries, like people can check them out online. Like, those are things that can happen, but not in Amazon's like, exclusive, we've got the rights to your stuff situation. So it's not a lot of money. Like I could maybe take Ted and I out to dinner, once a month if I really wanted to do that. But between that and the audiobooks and learning that process, having people narrate my books, I started that back in 2016 through ACX, again, part of Amazon. Learned eventually, don't do royalty share, pay the narrator so that then you get the rights and you can put that someplace else. It doesn't have to be just on Audible, and they have the rights to it for like 7 years. I'm coming up on 7 years of my first audiobook, and I'm trying to work on getting it removed from being exclusive
Yeah.
on Audible, Amazon, so that I can put it someplace else and actually make a little bit of money off of it that way, because it's not doing anything. So everybody has different experiences with different platforms. I found that Amazon's it's a good jumping off point in getting used to self-publishing, and it helps you understand the process. But I think unless you get really lucky and you're really good at marketing and, you've got that thing that just takes off, and you do it 24/7, and you know how to work social media, which I'm just not. It's just not my go-to. I'm not comfortable doing that. I'd rather just write and have people occasionally come across it. I figure at some point, if I'm really like have somebody holding my hand and doing it, that's different. But on my own, it's not my comfort zone place. So I'd rather write a story that people enjoy. And again, like my first couple books, like the first historical romance, like, again, that's like 20 years difference between like me writing it and then like rewriting it with an editor. So it's just like, it's like a night and day. You see your growth as a writer. You see what your weaknesses are. You work on those weaknesses. You get better at certain things. And I've loved writing fan fiction because I feel like that's helped my writing as well too. Writing something you really enjoy and then being able to apply it to a piece of quote unquote original fiction. I mean, again, everything I think is inspired from something else. So, but having that freedom to play and then be like, okay, now I've got to get serious. But yeah, the editing process is great when you have a good editor. You were talking about Dreamer as your beta. And again, I hope I don't know how long this person that I, occasionally like email every 6 months ago, I think I'm going to have another book idea. Will you be available to edit? And, they usually are, but I found that editor through the small press. Like she worked with me on my first DIY book that was through small press. And then when I left that, I still had her contact information. I said, do you do this stuff on the side? She's like, yes, I do. I'm like, great. Would you mind doing this for me? So I know that eventually I'll have to probably reach out to more people. But yeah, between that and cover design, like having a cover designer, and then, just having enough experience with publishing things myself that I know what's got to happen when, and that I need to give myself enough time to do this. And then I was finally just ready to kind of like try narrating myself, because that's also a big expense, and I didn't want to do royalty share. So I knew I'd have to pay somebody. And by that point I'd been doing fan fiction narrations, and I was like, well, let me just do it. I mean, the worst case scenario is I pull the book and it's just time that I've spent on it. But it's not money, that I've spent on it. And it's doing pretty well in terms of like being, checked out at libraries and stuff like that. So
so cool.
I like that. I like knowing that somebody's, checking out my book and listening, and not for nothing doesn't know me from anything and is just sees a story, reads a synopsis. Oh, I think I'd like that. And then checks out the book and listens to it. I like that. And I'm so grateful for a lot of the readers from my fan fiction. When I've stated that I write original fiction, I've been very lucky that a small group, but still a very like loyal group, has gone out and like has bought a book and read it.
It's
and
me.
Left a review. Yes, Karlee, thank you.
It's me.
but there's also
it's not just me. There are others.
Yeah,
there
like I got to shout out Anna and Val. They when they like what you do and then they support you in another area, that means a lot. It means a lot, and that they still like what you do when it's not, even though it's not technically Dean, it's still Dean. But like, reading a story that you've written and enjoying it means a lot. So yeah, it's definitely been I guess we're going on like an 8-year journey of me like getting back into writing. And like I said, I think I've published 9 books now, trying to work on another one, which
I'm just going to interject there. If you're looking at Sandra's Amazon page right now going, only count 8, Sandra.
Oh,
Why have you said 9? It's because she published one under a random flipping pen name.
I did,
that
and
doesn't relate to anything else.
I did that because it's a shorter book. It feels like more of a novella. And that was literally like, if we're going to be honest, was fan fiction that I just changed some names. It's just changed some names because the story felt.
Yeah, but it's fucking great.
I know, but the story felt like I could change names and it would still stand on its own but again, that one's really just like a romance. Like there's not a lot of conflict. I feel like those are like, and to me, that's kind of like an insta love story. Like, you don't have to you're just getting into the feels of the romance and the sex and all that kind of stuff. So for me, it needed another pen name for that.
It didn't. It categorically did not. It did not. Listen, if I could stack up and go from, it's not the same, but similar. If I could stack up and go from exclusively writing heterosexual reader inserts to publishing Wincest under the same name, you could have posted that under your name.
Well, we will agree to disagree.
It didn't need.
But anyway, yes.
But
if you go to my website,
you are looking at
it's there. Like if you go to my website, you'll see that, what the other pen name is and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. But I've only done that one under that. So.
Treating it like it's a secret. It's not a secret pen name. It's just like I tend to buy my media from Amazon because I have a Kindle and it is the most convenient thing for me to do, even though I don't like it because I'm aware that Amazon takes the lion's share and then the lion's share of what's left as well. I was going somewhere with that.
Was it about my name? Did it have something to do with
I think it was about getting media from other places, but like, that's why. So if you are looking on Amazon, because that is where I buy my books from, and you're like, I only see 8. There's the historical romance and there's the DIY series and then there's the cowboy book. Where's the other one? Just go to the website. Sandra Kyle, all one word, .com. SandraKyle.com. It's in there. It's under a different pen name. I don't know why. I've ripped her extensively about it. She hasn't changed it. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's also available on Audible as well.
I'd love to get to number 10 for my books. So we'll see. We'll see if that happens soon. So
there's an idea in the pipeline, isn't there? There's an idea in the pipeline. So
there's a collaboration pipeline.
It's a collaboration pipeline. But we need to we need to poke ourselves and be like, we should get back to this.
Again, it's a stop and start thing. Like honestly, looking back at how long it took, for Cowboy Canter, it was a while. But looking at other books I've written too, some have taken a year, some have taken a year and a half. So it depends. It depends on what's going on in real life. That really does. Yeah. That really does affect your writing. I'm not one of those people that I'm not Hemingway. I can't write because I'm like, I'm not going to drink and write. Like it's just not a thing. I can't, I need to write from a place of starts as escape and then it kind of grows into this big thing. So we'll get there. We'll get there.
We will.
It's always a work in progress. Everything's a work in progress all the time.
If you're not, Tuck Jensen, who's probably quoting someone else, if you're not winning, you're learning. So it'll get there. But I suppose my final thoughts, apart from thank you very much for indulging me, Sandra, because she was not happy. I was like, we're doing a whole fucking episode of this. And she was like, what? What do you mean we're doing a whole episode?
Yeah, I don't know how to market myself.
Like, what? And I'm like, I got questions.
Yeah.
And I started reading it and like, because I started it and then there was a big gap between me finishing it. But I deliberately didn't write notes on the book because I was like, I want to try and consume this from an outsider perspective. I don't want to be thinking, oh, I'm going to like interview the author after this, or I know this, or I know this. I just want to read the book. And then by the time I got to the end of it, I was like, I wish I had notes. I had questions. I can't remember what all of them were. Fucking hell. There was a brief period where I was like, I could probably reread it in an afternoon. And then my brain went, no, the fuck you don't. So we just moved on from that. But like, yeah, first of all, thank you for letting me, be like, hi, look. But my final thoughts on Cowboy Canter is, if you want a romance novel that hits all the right notes but doesn't feel stale and boring, keeps it fresh, keeps it interesting, and if you just really think, I wonder what Dean would look like in a cowboy hat and boots around horses, somehow still being fucking amazing. I don't like horses. I don't like them. They kick from one end and they bite from the other. They're not my things. You should definitely pick this up 100%. If you're a fan of Sandra's fan fiction and you just haven't made the leap over to original fiction for whatever reason, pick this one. This is the one, I promise.
I don't think it's that hard of a leap, really. Yeah, I think for this to that, it's not that hard of a leap. Yeah. I think it's
Yeah. And if you are a fan of getting to the end of the book and going, well, why didn't I fucking see that coming? And then frantically flipping back pages or clicking back pages or scrolling back up, depending where you're consuming it, and going, oh, fuck, it was right there. I just didn't see it. If you're a fan of that, which I am not, because I always end up going, fucking hell, Sandra is your person. So I expect Sandra to be coming to me in the week after this episode comes out going, I have had a massive uptick in people buying this book. I expect to see
it. That would be lovely.
Do the thing. Her and Ted deserve a meal. Go buy the book, okay? Nice meal. Look, Jensen's coming to the UK. We got plans, people. Go buy the book.
Oh yeah, it can help fund our convention plans in the future. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh goodness.
So
no, thank you. I appreciate I like talking about this stuff. Just sometimes you don't know how to do it. You don't know how to go about doing it. So I appreciate you being my cheerleader for this. So yes, thank you.
Given that the other two, unless you particularly want me to go and reread Stay at Home Romance, which I read when it was a fan fiction, but I will do. If you had to choose, would you advise me to go and start the historical romance or the DIY series?
I think you should stay away from the historical romance one altogether. I don't think that's your jam.
No,
I don't think so.
I'll give it a try.
You can give it a try. I don't think you're gonna like it. I know you.
I want you to know. I read an entire book written by a Republican, and I managed to forget for the entire book that she was a Republican. Yeah. Like until right at the end.
So I think the only thing about the historical one, and again, like I think there's a certain group of people who like historical romance would like it. I feel like it's more of an representation of my earlier writing style and then how it changes. I think the last two books, I'm very proud of, like I think it's Marissa and Imogen, because I feel like that's where I take the story and kind of work on new characters and how they work in the world. And there is plot where like you see the same events occurring from different points of view. So that kind of saying that everyone's the hero of their own story, I kind of like took that into play with each of the different ladies, kind of like that are taking center stage in each of the books. So I'm really proud of Marissa. I'm really proud of Imogen, because I feel like it took the initial fanficky idea and fleshed out the characters more. So I mean, you kind of have to read the first two, I think, to get an idea of the plot. But you might be okay with just reading the last two. I'm very proud of the DIY books. The DIY books I'm proud of, because those were like, that was like me really starting to get back into writing that way. So, and the character of Daniel, I know I knew nothing about Dean Winchester and Jensen Ackles. My God, if it's not a Dean tropey character, I just like that. I like those types of characters. I wrote a character that if you looked back on it, you'd be like, oh, you were thinking of Dean when you wrote this. No, I wasn't. I didn't know who Dean Winchester was.
So was it Dean that made you go, oh shit, I have a type? Or was it Jensen that made you go, oh fuck, I have a type?
I think it was Dean first before it was Jensen. I think I I fell in love with Jensen more, realizing how much he has like his inner Dean inside of him. I think that was it too. But Dean pretty much that character, that bad boy with a heart of gold kind of guy, or the guy that, like all the ladies are just like, fawning over, and, maybe he realizes it to some extent, but he's not cocky about it, like that kind of guy. So you might like, if you ever like, and that one's based in Savannah, Georgia, which again, I had never visited in full, but I had done so much Google research and so much Google Map research and so much of everything research that I made a point of a few years later going back with Ted and going, we are going to find all of these places that I've written about and take pictures of. And that's what I did. So Savannah's a beautiful place. And I really wanted to try to describe that. And I think I did with all of the characters in that story. So yeah, I really like the DIY series. I like that. And that's a lot of plot, little breadcrumbs here and there throughout 3 books. And kind of like culminates in the 3rd book. 3rd book is the shortest out of all of them. But yeah, I think you might like that one. I think you might like that one.
That's going to be the next one I try. That is going to be the next one. So hence why I asked. I was like, which one do you think I should do next?
Just knowing you, historical, because I mean, I don't even know if I could write a historical romance anymore. Like, I don't even think I want to do that anymore. But yeah.
Oh, that's fair. Well, I suppose then we should wrap this puppy up.
This has been another long one. Jesus.
Yay. Look, I had things to talk about. I had questions. That's probably my fault. I had questions.
No. But, this was good. I enjoyed this. Thank you. Thank you for letting me wax.
Oh, I spent 3 hours talking about a fanfiction story. Shut up. You invented this from your own brain space. So do you want to do your part of the outro? We're so fucking professional, guys.
Yeah.
We've been at this a year and a half nearly. Oh my God. Like, it is nearly a year and a half. Holy shit.
That's what makes us charming, is our ability to not remain totally professional. But yes, if you want to reach out to us, you can email us at idlingintheimpala@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter at idlingintheletterd_impala. If you'd like to make your voice a male, check the description for a link to send us a voice message. You can find links to our personal socials and our AO3 accounts in the description. And there's also a link to my author website and my original fiction, Cowboy Canter. You can go and get that. You can read it. You can let me know what you think about it.
You can do and should do all of those things. And the website is sandrakyle.com. Sandra Kyle, all one word. Like, you're so bad at this, babes. You could have slipped it in there. But while you're checking out sandrakyle.com, you can check out the podcast website as well. Look at that for a segue. Yeah. Our podcast website is idlingintheimpala.com. On our website, you will find our merch. That is the only place you can get official Idling in the Impala merch. If you see it anywhere else, let us know, because it's not legit. There are also YouTube-y linky things and Spotify linky doodads and behind-the-scenes information about me and Sandra. And I am going to get around to putting up a picture of the mascot as well, who is currently living his best life, napping on my husband's clothes, which is a bit of a weird choice for him to make, but fair enough. But yes, go check out sandrakyle.com, check out idlingintheimpala.com, give us some feedback. We love it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff wherever you access your podcast, but especially if you are listening, watching on YouTube. Likes and comments really help us with the YouTube algorithm. All hail its benevolence. In the description as well, you will find the current causes that we are championing. Take a look at them if you can, if you want to, if you're able to give a little bit, or you need access to the help that those charities provide. All the information is in the description. And with that, we will say thank you for joining us in the back seat, and we will see you next time, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.